Alright guys, we are back and it is so great to see you. Wow, it's hard to believe we are now in the future, 2022. I don't know why I said we're in the future, but I'm going to own it, I'm going to go with it. But either way, I just realized I got to keep my, I'm actually cooking a brisket today. I've been smoking a brisket all day today. Not a big one, but a small. It's about 3 pounds, and I'm excited. So I've been watching this thing all afternoon. Once it gets to, let's see if we can make this out here, 165 right there. It's time for me to go down there, wrap that thing up. I have about 3 hours to go to cook that darn thing, and it is go time later on. So, but I'm not going to be talking about a brisket here today. I wanted to take the time to address one of the questions that, when we reflect back on 2021 and some of the questions that we saw or saw more of. Should you get a DSLR or a mirrorless? And I know what you're thinking. Hey, Alex, aren't DSLRs dead? I mean, you've probably seen a few articles out there at least that's talking about DSLRs this, DSLR dead, this and that. And today's video, you're going to join me and you're going to find out why DSLRs are not dead, and it's not a bad idea even in 2022. But first, before we dive into this video, if you can do me a gigantic favor. You see, YouTube has this algorithm that, when you like a video, you're basically telling YouTube that, hey, this was a helpful video. YouTube is then going to share that video with more and more people. If you watch this channel, you know where I'm leaning with this. We could really use your help. It's always appreciated when you hit that like button down below. It really does help with the whole YouTube algorithm. That said, my friend, pull up a seat in. Let's go. Now, a great debate we're having today is if you should get a DSLR or a mirrorless camera in 2022. And honestly, if you were to ask me this question back in 2020, going into 2021, I would have wholeheartedly said, yes, hell yeah. Get a DSLR simply to be able to take advantage of the incredible deals that manufacturers were offering at the time. Now, I'm not quite as excited about recommending DSLR camera in 22, but I will say that DSLRs are still relevant this year. Now, while DSLRs aren't dead, people in the media have really overused that phrase way too much. Now, it's obvious that they are on their way out. Now, according to Statistica, 16.2 million DSLRs were shipped back in 2012. Now, in 2020, that number was 2.38 million. Now, conversely, mirrorless cameras have been on the rise, with 2018 marking the first year that the value was more than DSLRs. Now in 2020, more mirrorless cameras were produced than DSLRs for the first time. Also, in 2020, mirrorless cameras accounted for 33% of sales and 54% of total value. If you look back on 2021, we've seen a further shift by camera manufacturers towards mirrorless and away from DSLRs. Now take, for example, Canon. Their newest DSLR, which is the 90D, which was announced back in August of 2019. If we look at Canon's Wikipedia page, we can see just how many DSLRs have been discontinued. You scroll down that list, friend, the shorter question is, how many are still left? So you can see there's quite a handful that have been chopped here. Now, many of these cameras are simply old, but even the newer DSLRs are getting the axe simply because the popularity of mirrorless cameras, difficulties from the pandemic has caused with getting chips, and the rise of the really much improved smartphone camera technology. On top of that, camera manufacturers are prioritizing new mirrorless cameras. Look back, Canon, for example, the R3 was released at the end of last year, and they're also going to announce the R5C, there we go, this month in January. Nikon released the Z9 last year. Sony released the A1. Guys, look at these. All these big splashes in the camera industry are mirrorless cameras. So as I noted a moment ago, there were still 2.38 million DSLRs shipped in 2020. Now, through October of 2021, there was nearly 1.9 million DSLRs that were shipped. So while their numbers are down, there's still a lot of new DSLRs that are really floating around out there. Now, being the case, DSLRs are still ideal for some folks. For example, if you already have a DSLR and a collection of lenses that are for that camera, it makes sense to upgrade to a newer DSLR of that same brand so you can continue using the same lenses. Now, of course, you can get an adapter to use your older DSLR lenses on a mirrorless camera, but we'll get into that here in a moment. Now, another example, you can find killer deals on pre-owned DSLRs on popular sites like MPB, KEH, Adorama, B&H. These are all sites that have a used camera department. And if you find a good deal on a DSLR that has everything that you want and need and is a great price, hell, you shouldn't turn it down just because it's a DSLR. Heck, you can find great deals on brand new DSLRs right now today on popular sites like Adorama, B&H, Sammy's, heck, even Amazon. And again, if you find a good deal on the camera and it has all the checks off all the boxes that you need to do, who cares if it's a DSLR? Get out there and pick it up. Now, as the stats I shared with you a moment ago indicate, mirrorless is really the future. Not only are camera companies shifting to more resources towards mirrorless cameras, but they're also developing more lenses for their mirrorless systems. Now, let's use Canon as a continued example again. When they unveiled their USR ecosystem back in 2018, they had a fantastic collection of RF lenses to go with the original EOS R camera. That was one of the main reasons, if you go back to some of my earlier videos, when I made the switch, why I switched from Nikon over to Canon. Well, in the 3 years since, the RF lens lineup has gotten far more robust. Now, the same can be said for the Nikon with their Z-mount lenses, and moving forward, Canon, Nikon, and Sony and other manufacturers aren't going to be really pumping out new DSLRs or lenses with the old DSLR mounts. Their new gear is really going to be tailored towards the mirrorless ecosystem. Now, that means if you want a camera for 2022 that is future-proof, and I'm cautiously saying that because as future-proof as cameras can be, mirrorless is the way to go. Now, who else might benefit off of buying a mirrorless camera, you may be asking? Well, if you're brand new to photography and you don't currently own a interchangeable lens camera, investing in a mirrorless system is really definitely going to be a better idea than buying a DSLR. If you're currently a mirrorless camera user that wants to make an upgrade, it doesn't make much sense to jump ship to a DSLR easier. And if you shoot a lot of video, mirrorless cameras, let's be real here, are generally much more capable than DSLRs. Now, there's also a portability factor to consider as well. And let's consider the size here. Mirrorless cameras are generally smaller and lighter than the DSLR counterparts, mainly due to the lack of complex mirror system that's found in the DSLR. So if you travel a lot or just simply want a smaller kit, a mirrorless camera is going to be the way to go. Now, of course, there are other advantages of going mirrorless. For example, when you look through the viewfinder of a mirrorless camera, what you see is actually as it's being recorded on the camera's sensor. This is not the case with what happens with a DSLR. So when you look through a DSLR's viewfinder, it has nothing to do with the exposure settings that you're using. That's why if you look at a DSLR user, they're constantly taking their camera away from their eye to look down at the shot that they took on the rear LCD to see if they need to make any adjustments to the composition or the camera settings itself. So mirrorless cameras offer the advantage of being able to preview the shot before you take it because the viewfinder, and really the rear LCD for that matter, reflect what the camera settings are using. Now you can change the aperture on the mirrorless camera as you look through the viewfinder, and you can see the changes or what will happen to the image right then and there. The same goes for shutter speed and ISO and really other settings on that note. Now, as a result of this, when you shoot with a mirrorless camera, there's far less time involved in making corrections because again, what you see in the viewfinder is what you get. You don't have to take tons of test shots with different camera settings because you can simply see the changes that result in what you're looking through the viewfinder or the rear LCD. This means that you're less likely to miss important shots. So imagine if you're a wildlife photographer or a sports photographer, getting the shot can literally be the difference of a fraction of a second. So if you shoot with a DSLR, you might miss the best shot of the day because you're fiddling around with the camera. The settings are chimping the images on the rear LCD. Now, of course, there are loads of other features and technologies in mirrorless cameras that you just can't find in DSLR cameras. The EVFs in mirrorless cameras display all sorts of information in camera settings like the histogram and even the horizon so your images are level. Now, mirrorless cameras have IBIS to help you get nice sharp images when you're hand holding the image in. Now, this isn't to say that there's no DSLR cameras that have IBIS, but that's a much smaller number than mirrorless cameras. Now, as I mentioned earlier, video specs on a mirrorless camera are much better than DSLRs. Now, you can shoot 8K on several mirrorless modes or models right now and you simply can't find that on DSLRs. And I'm not counting, like, I had the Nikon D850. I seem to remember that had an 8K time lapse. I'm not talking about time lapse. I'm talking about bona fide, legitimate 8K video. Now, autofocus systems on a mirrorless camera are much more advanced as well. So you get real-time tracking the eyes, animals, and geez, cars, geez, even. And which makes it much easier to get moving subjects or actually in focus with a mirrorless camera. All right, and you're saying, Alex, okay, enough of this. What camera should I get, a DSLR or a mirrorless? Well, ultimately, what you should get depends on your specific needs in your want. Now, in most cases, getting a mirrorless camera is the way to go in 2022. Mirrorless is definitely the future, and mirrorless systems offer many more benefits that you just can't get in a DSLRs. But as I discussed earlier, DSLRs can still provide value to some photographers. So if you're looking for an inexpensive or a good deal on a camera, or you're already invested in a DSLR ecosystem, it might make sense for you to carry on with the DSLR at least for a few years. All right, guys, and there you go on that. But before we go jumping off here, as usual, let's talk about our current giveaway. We have not one, not two, but three excellent prizes to give away this time around. We have the Hazard 4 Pillbox camera bag, we have the Haida M15 filter set, and of course, the $100 Adorama gift card. Now, as always, entering the giveaway is really simple. Step 1, like this video and subscribe to our channel. Step 2, leave a comment below. In fact, the more videos that you watch and leave a comment on, the more chances that you have to win. So get watching some more other videos and leave some comments. Step 3, register on PhotographyTalk and introduce yourself in the forum. Now, if you are a register on the site during one of the last giveaways, you're still eligible to win, but friend, as I keep saying over and over again, I feel like a broken record here. Swing it by, say hello, post some photos. We would love to see you. And friend, that is it. For complete details on the giveaway, including how to register on PhotographyTalk and how to say hello in the forum, check out the description below. Good luck. All right, guys, and that is it. This was a fun video to put together, considering we're seeing a lot of people, a lot more people jumping into the photography space who started their foundation off, or they started off in photography with a smartphone of some sort, which even professionals, both videography and stills, this is a great resource to have. But the important thing is they're looking to expand their craft into a mirrorless or DSLR camera. That's really cool to see those numbers increasing. But it's that time of the video where I'm going to ask you guys to do all that YouTube stuff that is oh so valuable. So if you found some value with this video, hit that like button down below. If you're currently not subscribed to the channel, friend, we would love to have you part of the family. We do these videos very often, so having you part of this is going to be a blast. So, hell, you've gone this far. Why don't you just hit that bell so therefore you're notified each time they would come out with one of these new videos. All right, guys, well, that is all I have here for you today. So I'm going to be jumping out of my studio. Actually, I'm going to check on my brisket down below. And so anyways, you get out there, stay healthy, and take your best shot.